Madam Secretary, the President keeps saying he does not wish to have cuts in social. Is he aware that under current law, when the program goes broke in 9 years, that there will be a 24% benefit cut for those who are current recipients? Is he aware of that?
Well, it's clear that Social Security...
But is he, I apologize for interruption, but I have limited time. Is the President aware that when social goes broke in 9 years, under current law, there's a 24% cut in benefits for people who are currently receiving?
If we don't do anything about it, I think that's about right. But
okay, let me
the
ask.
President will wants to strengthen Social Security.
In the $4.5 trillion of taxes the President has proposed, are any of those taxes going to shore up Social Security? I actually know that answer. The answer is of the $4.5 trillion in taxes he has proposed, not a dime is going to shore up Social Security. Does the President know personally anybody who is dependent upon Social Security, and if their benefits are cut by 24%, they will slide into poverty? It's hard for you to know, so I'll give you a pass on that.
The President knows many people on Social Security.
Then why doesn't the President care?
He cares very deeply.
Then where is his plan?
He stands ready to work with
That's
Congress
a lie,
to address.
because when a bipartisan group of senators has repeatedly requested to meet with him about social, so that somebody who is a current beneficiary will not see her benefits cut by 24%, we have not heard anything on our request. And we've made multiple requests to meet with the President. Now, you can't comment on that, I realize that, but that is a fact. And if you've been told to say he stands ready to meet, I will tell you there's absolutely no evidence, because we have not gotten our meeting.
Well, I believe the President does stand ready to work with Congress
empirically, that is not
to address
true.
this issue.
Now, the President in the past has proposed increasing taxes on those making over $400,000 to pay for it. Although he's not made that formally, he has said that in the past. Now, he's also proposed to tax them more to pay for Medicare, and also to close the debt and deficit. So what would the rates have to be on that 2% of Americans who earn over $400K in order to do Medicare, the debt and deficit, and also to address our 75-year shortfall in Social Security? Do you have any sense of what the rates would have to be?
Well, he has proposed explicit increases in tax rates on very high income.
But do you think it's realistic that he can pay for Medicare, debt and deficit, and also address a 75% shortfall in social, a 75-year shortfall in social, by only taxing, the only thing he's going to do is to lay higher taxes on those who make more than 2%? I'm sure there's a projection of how much those rates would have to be. Can you tell us what those rates would have to be to do everything he is saying?
I can't tell you that, but I do know that he's put on the table many proposals that would raise very substantial revenues.
But of that $4.5 trillion, not a dime is going to social. And if you cannot tell me, I presume that they've not actually modeled what those rates would have to be, which tells me that he's actually not been developing his plan. Now, this is incredibly worrisome from a president who should be sympathetic with someone who, under current law, is going to get a 24% cut in her benefits.
The President is completely committed to protecting seniors who rely on Social Security.
Now, if we doubled our debt-to-GDP ratio, just theoretically, if you will, and aside from our conversation, if we double that GDP to debt ratio, what effect would that have on the economy?
So right now, and in the President's budget proposal,
I'm going to ask you just the theoretical independently of the budget proposal.
If we were to double the debt to GDP ratio?
Yes.
I don't see why we would need
But
to
if we did, just you're an economist, if we did, what would be the effect upon the economy?
Well, it would tend to raise net interest costs.
Would it be a negative effect on the economy? Of course it would be.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, of course it would be. we've actually modeled this. For the president to do nothing, let's assume that we cast aside current law and we just double the national debt, and that's what it would do. It would have a devastating effect upon the economy. CBO says they cannot model the deleterious effects that would occur because of that. So we have a situation where the president has not proposed a single plan. He has turned down multiple requests for meetings with senators, and our options are a 24% cut on a person currently receiving, doubling our national debt, which CBO says cannot be modeled, and you agree that would be a deleterious effect. And he's not modeled the tax rates that would be required if he just wants to raise taxes.
Look, what I know is that the president is committed to Social Security. He stands ready to work with Congress, and he's put on
I'm out of time. I don't mean to be rude, but since I've had multiple requests on a bipartisan basis to meet with him and he's turned everyone down, that rings hollow.
My colleagues are out of time, and I would just caution colleagues, we got plenty of differences around here, but accusing witnesses of lying is over the line.
I accept that, and I did not mean that for the Madam Secretary, who is merely saying that which she's been told. I'm saying it for an empiric observation when the president says he's ready to meet and he's turned down multiple
The time
times.
of the gentleman's expired. Accusing witnesses of lying
But I did not
over the
accuse
line.
her.
Welcome, Secretary Yellen. I just want to start. Do you know how much a dollar that you held at the start of the Biden administration in January 2021 is worth today?
Well, we've had inflation, and it's declined in its purchasing power.
It's worth 87 cents. In your testimony, you said that inflation is the #1 economic problem. Do you know what the inflation rate was at the start of the Biden administration in January 2021?
It was substantially lower.
It was 1.4%. You said that inflation has many causes. I agree with that. By the way, I would say that the #1 economic problem is our debt and deficit. And I would say that the top 3 causes of inflation are massive deficit spending, the war on fossil fuels, which have driven gasoline prices to record levels, obviously supply chain dislocation. That was caused by our miserably failed and incredibly stupid response to COVID, the pandemic. But would you agree those are the top 3 causes of inflation? Deficit spending, high energy costs, and supply dislocations?
I don't believe that deficit spending is one of the main causes
You
of
don't?
inflation.
I mean, inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. So
Well,
when
we
you're
have-
printing all this out, so do you know in the first 3 fiscal years of the Biden administration, you know how much the total deficit spending is going to be?
We had an economic collapse that was caused by
Right,
the
and we were
pandemic.
certainly coming out of that because there's all this pent-up demand and a sloshing around of trillions of dollars. So I'll answer that question for you, too. The first 3 fiscal years of this administration, the total deficits would be about $5.7 trillion. So now you're here testifying about the president's budget. How much are the total deficits over that 10-year period according to the president's budget? You don't know that off the top of your head? Here, I'm running out. It's $17 trillion, okay?
Yeah, that's
You're going to drive the debt from somewhere around $32 trillion up to about $50 trillion, correct?
yes. But what I believe is the single most important metric for judging the fiscal stance of the country is real net interest as a share of GDP.
Okay.
We have
So are you
a
concerned
large
when you're taking the
GDP.
debt from $32 to $50 trillion? Are you concerned who's going to buy that debt, and also at what rate they'll expect to be compensated for buying riskier and riskier debt? Are you concerned about that?
Well, if the real net interest cost of the debt remains low relative to GDP, and we're on a sustainable fiscal
Well, we're not on a
Well,
sustainable path.
I would
Senator
disagree with
Cassidy was talking about the president's demagoguery on Social Security, unwillingness to try and save Social Security. If we do nothing, and the Social Security Trust Fund runs out 2023 to 2025, about the end of the budget period, are you concerned about, are we going to have the financial wherewithal to plus up benefits to honor those promises? I mean, you think we're going to, with $50 trillion in debt, a debt's exceeding our GDP, aren't you concerned about our inability to honor those promises?
The interest cost on the debt as a share of our economy remains quite low throughout the 10-year horizon of the president's budget. It remains around 1%.
Secretary, and you're also the one who said that
very manageable.
You also said that inflation was transitory, and it certainly isn't. And I think Chairman Powell certainly now agrees the fact that, no, we've got something going on here that's going to take a very long while, unfortunately, to wring out of our system. Not only you, but OMB Director Young and members of the other side keep talking about that you're cutting deficits. The deficit in 2021 obviously was high because of the pandemic. But in 2022 is about 1.4 trillion. 2023 we think it's going to be about 1.6 trillion. 2024 you're projecting 1.85 trillion. And again, growing debt by another 7%. It never drops below $1.5 trillion. How can you claim that you're cutting deficits?
Well, it always is a comparison with the baseline of what would happen if our policies were not really enacted, and the increase in deficits would be larger. There's net deficit reduction over 10 years.
Saying you're cutting the deficit is just misleading the American public. Let me ask you one final question, because we always hear on the other side, same thing from OMB Director Young yesterday, that we want to make the rich pay their fair share. So, I mean, the fact is, and this is the latest figures we have from the Treasury, 2020, the top 1% made about 22% of income, but they paid 42.3% of the income tax. Now, I'm not going to ask you the metric. At what point, I mean, how much of the total income tax should the top 1% pay before you'll consider, and before President Biden will consider that they're finally paying their fair share? I mean, they're paying double the income tax that they're getting in income. It's obviously a highly progressive rate. By the way, the bottom, they're paying about
colleague's over his time, and I want the witness to answer his question.
Well, I believe that billionaires should pay rates that are not lower than what a teacher or firefighter pays.
Okay, the top 1% averages
the time of the gentleman's expired. Senator Tillis is
my
next.
colleague got 7 minutes. The top 1% pay
the time of the gentleman's expired.
The bottom 50% pay 3.1. We have a highly progressive tax system.
Senator Tillis, you're next.